All right, it's on.
Is it on now? Hello? Ooh. Apologize for that. I looked at most of this stuff, and I agree there's a couple little things that, in terms of residential, but it doesn't address the industrial sections and the commercial use areas. So that would be where, if we have a follow-up meeting, I would recommend to the board that we do that, because there's a lot of areas in town that have non-conforming fences for security reasons that are in industrial sections. And I feel bad because I have to tell somebody, no, I can't let you put a fence in because our ordinance doesn't allow it, when there's 7 of them within earshot of that business, you know what I mean? So that's one issue that I noticed since I've been here. I've only been here 6 weeks, so
Okay.
I'm just learning this particular city ordinance. Every jurisdiction, as you know, is different, so. That's all I wanted to say.
That being quiet, let me ask a question. Mr. Public, is it your intention to modify and/or provide us with documentation for commercial and/or industrial? I mean, obviously, this is a modification of
The
the
direction I've been
residential
given
code.
at this point is for residential. We can definitely bring back commercial,
Okay.
because I anticipate this probably taking 2 or 3 meetings of P&Z before we can hash out something that we could then take to the council. So the next meeting, we can go ahead and also bring some stuff and discuss commercial.
Sure.
But just what you have in front of you is strictly for residential fencing at this point.
Okay. I'm gonna kind of defer and see, it's kind of odd that we have people from the public here, so I'm gonna hear what their concerns are first, and then the board can discuss after the fact, so we can excuse these gentlemen if they need be. Please, participant.
Hi, my name is Bob Fielder at 5426 Miles Boulevard. What I would really like to see the city adopt is the county ordinance, which allows you to have a fence up to 15 feet from the water. And I have a house here and I have one in the county, and the other house is on the Gulf. And we have a fence, a solid fence up to 15 feet, and then we have chain link out to the Gulf. And it works very well. It doesn't, I don't think there's any people that are on the water here that, would really have any objections to a solid fence up to 15 feet before you get to the water, because that way you can see down that way, but it gives you a little bit of privacy.
Okay.
But that's the main thing I wanted to bring up.
And yours
But-
is within 15 feet of the actual seawall, is that what you're saying?
Yes.
Stating? Okay.
And then have the chain link from there, and it works out very well. That's what the county code calls for.
Okay. Is that it?
That's pretty much it.
Fantastic. Thank you.
Oh, yes, as a matter of fact, yeah, the construction, we were concerned about, with, whether you could have, I frankly don't care anything about seeing in the neighbor's yard, but, when they talk about the fencing, even to it, like the pickets.
Sure.
Is that allowed, or is it strictly, because when I come down here a while back to get a permit, and they told me that a chain link was the only thing I could put up.
Okay.
And I think chain link fences are ugly, but that's neither here nor there.
I believe that's one of the issues you have actually addressed. In
That's
here.
something we will be discussing.
Okay, thank you.
Fantastic. All right, great. Dennis, you had a question?
Yeah, what, on that fence that's 15 feet from the water,
Yes.
how high is that?
Oh, now in the county, you can go 6 feet. The one I have on the one in the county is 6 feet, and then it's a regular 4-foot chain link. But I would be just fine with, I wouldn't want anything any higher than 4 foot over here.
Mr. Cole?
Yes.
Sir, if I could ask you one more time, what was your name and address for the record?
Bob Fielder.
Mr. Fielder?
5426 Miles Drive.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, thank you very much. Questions and/or concerns from members of the board? Besides, Dennis already had one question. Anyone? I personally, I think this is, the existing fence ordinance, I've been doing this for entirely too long, was extremely ambiguous.
Yes.
This is much better, because there's a lot of clarification involved in it. But I had heard even a little bit of a discussion prior. There's still some obviously some concerns from the residents as well as some of the staff, some of the board members.
Can we take this by section?
Absolutely, that'd be a fantastic way to do it. Actually, why don't we do this, why don't we do it by individual members and you address the issues you have concern with? So we can start right with you, Bob.
All right, thank you. My concerns, I get concerns about every part of it, actually.
Okay?
Whether it's a canal or natural body of water, this, what Joe prepared, talks about natural bodies versus man-made bodies. And we do have quite a few decorative man-made bodies, retention ponds, if you will, that have been turned into something better that people are wanting to maintain a view of. I don't know what the rest of the board feels, but a body of water to me is a body of water, whether it be man-made or whether it be natural. A lot of these developments create a body of water which they intend to be decorative and which they intend to enhance the value of the community. And I think it's, if we don't protect those, and we're not doing our due diligence in that regard. As far as section 2, talking about the type of material of the fence, I felt that the definition is ambiguous. It says constructed with fencing material, but it doesn't tell me the characteristics of the material. They just simply gave 2 examples. And what they're trying to say is a fence you can look through. So do we want a fence that has a certain percentage of open space they can look through? We want a fence with a certain percentage of opacity, which is kind of hard to really define. It's a lot better to have a fence you can actually measure and come back to. I have, 40% of the fence is open. We set some kind of number of its visibility through it. And then use chain link or decorative wrought iron as an example, but not as a definition. This seems to me to give a definition of chain link and wrought iron as the permissible types. And that's by discussion, not really the intent, I didn't believe. It does go on to say so as to not obstruct the view of the waterway, but it doesn't really, I think it should have definition to type of fence material, the characteristics of that fencing material that we are desiring. Thirdly, adjacent property owners. We should give some guidance as to what that means. Who is an adjacent property owner whose view is protected? Is it the guy across the street? Is it the guy in the car driving down the street? Or is it the immediate neighbor? I think these are valid points that have been misused in the past and need to be clarified. The last section was section 6. I agree entirely with the rewritten part so that the city manager no longer has the right to act singularly and waive the height restrictions, but that the height restrictions should come before an unbiased board. And those are my concerns with, one other concern, and I addressed this in the November meeting. Section 3 talks about fence from the waterfront property line to the nearest building line. I noted in November that that was ambiguous and needed to be defined. I still feel the same way. We should define what they mean. What's this gentleman's last name?
Mr. Cosmo.
Mr. Cosmo. Can you answer that? If you have a definition of building line as is written in section 3 right now, how would you define that?
It's kind of tough. Some people refer to it as zero lot line, building line.
It's on the front cover of section 3.
No natural fence.
Sorry.
Water front property line to the nearest building line. On those there. I would almost call that 4 feet from the waterfront property line to the nearest lot line of a residential property.
Will that be the entire lot line?
Yeah,
it was defined to me as the point on the property adjacent to the closest part of the building. But that's not a building line. By definition, that's the rear of the building. Definition of building line is the restrictive line on the front and the side.
Setbacks.
Setbacks. Those are building lines, what we call it in the
Correct.
industry.
Absolutely.
So I felt like that was ambiguous and needed further clarification in order to accurately go out there on the ground and mark where this point is.
Right.
And I could do some research and get some better research on that.
I agree with that. That because of that fact and the way the city is constantly evolving, and people are modifying and or doing additions to properties and everything else. If it's based off say the rear of the house, and the rear of the house is 45 feet from the seawall, we know the setback requirement's 25 feet. So if we make the person put up their fence off the rear of the property, but they decide that they're going to put an addition on the back, now their fence doesn't meet the original code. So that's a very valid point from that standpoint. Okay. Mr. Stout, are you finished, Mr. Bob?
Yes, I am. Thank you.
Questions or concerns?
I was only trying to understand number 3 about the planting shrubs or hedges, I guess. What's the thinking here? Somebody's trying to make a fence out of a hedge? Is it on? Okay. On number 3, where it talks about plantings and hedges, is the idea there is to prevent somebody from using plants to
Yes, that's my
build a fence?
understanding. What you have on the first 2 pages is the current ordinance as it stands now. And I believe that is the intent of that section 3, is to prohibit somebody from trying to establish some sort of hedgerow or obstruction using vegetative materials.
Okay.
But that being said, number 3 doesn't state that you can't plant them, you just can't make them any higher than 4 feet.
Yes.
So if I went through the process of putting in a decorative wrought iron fence from my water line down, and my neighbor decided that he wanted to put up a hedge down that line, now it's completely negated the fact that I had something you could see through, because now the hedge is impeding the view anyway. So,
That is true. This section does not address obstruction of view.
right, absolutely. Which is something we should probably definitely address, because that's been the issue in the past more than once.
There's things like palm trees and mangroves and sea grapes that are all native and encouraged and everything from the state to plant and to grow. So I just seems like that could be a hindrance to people to do that.
Mm-hmm.
Or if your mangroves, it's illegal to cut mangroves down, so if it grows to 4 feet, I guess you got to cut it down according to that. It seems like that could be a problem.
Mangrove management requires isn't that a state permit?
I believe so.
Yeah.
Is that in mangrove you establish yourself, then falls
No, that's
in
an
protection?
Any kind of natural, yeah.
Whether it's planted or naturally grown, I believe it applies to that.
Anything else?
No, that's the only question I have right now.
Gene? Lori?
What would happen to the homes that are already in violation? Would they be grandfathered in, or?
The lovely issue of grandfathering.
Yes, it's a thorn in my side. I guess I'd specifically like what sort of, talking about a fence that's along a retention pond right now, if you were to go ahead and change it, they would be grandfathered in.
Okay.
Because they already have a vested interest in their property and they complied with the law that was at the time. So there's not really anything we could do. Unless the fence was dilapidated, a hurricane came through and something, then it falls under another section. If I think
Right.
more than 50% is damaged, it has to comply with current code.
Chairman, I just want to comment on that if you want. That's pretty standard, I mean, a grandfathering, because, I mean, we do that in building code just because every time we would adopt a new code, everybody would be in violation, so.
Right.
And so, you know, you pretty much have to do that.
Okay. So that's what yours, that's it? Dennis, you have any other ones?
I just have one question under subsection 9 here.
Mm-hmm.
It relates
trying to think of an example in the city, which, a street name.
You talking about an alley behind a house or a row of houses?
Correct.
Do we have any of those in the city?
I know where?
You have some running along Grand Boulevard.
Oh, absolutely correct.
I'm assuming that they would fall into the same category here. And I don't know, I'm not aware of any other ones that may exist in the city, but my guess is probably a few.
I was unaware of an alley in Port Richey, even on Grand Boulevard.
Yeah, there's one that runs behind Grand Boulevard, parallel to Grand Boulevard between Regis and 19. And you currently have utilities in there.
Is it usable by other traffic?
It's used, I don't know how much traffic is used in there. But again, you've got utilities in that.
I would think an alley would carry with it a prescriptive right-of-way, which would prevent it from being fenced.
Right. Any kind of utility easements have to have accessibility anyway. That's-
Well, if you look at number 4, there's a section in number 4, a sentence in number 4 that says, no fence may be allowed in an easement recorded for ingress,
Right.
egress, access purposes.
Right.
It doesn't specifically address your question, but that's in there.
Yeah, because the utility companies will take it down.
Mhm.
Well, that would impact the homeowners as well.
Absolutely.
Because you basically have a 25-foot easement behind any property, correct?
Correct.
Don't mind.
But
I don't have a 25-foot easement behind my property.
I think we're supposed to have a 25-foot easement behind every property.
Unless the property is considered to be non-conforming. So, which there are limited examples in the city, but, yeah, the standard is 25 feet, yeah.
Are you talking an easement or are you talking a setback?
The setback.
Okay, setback's one thing, and
Easements,
easement's
yeah,
another.
easement's different. So, and those are clearly defined, I'm sure that the building department actually has a map of all the easements in the city as well, so. I mean, only thing I have to say, I mean, I have a couple, most of the things have been addressed already. I commend you for how far you've come, because I've seen what it looked like before. You have addressed a lot of the issues that have been come either before this board or the city council over the last 15 years that I've been doing this. So, we've come a long way, but there are still some serious things that need to be addressed. The gauge of the opening or the opacity of the actual fence is something that definitely needs to be addressed. I know that you can go and call a board-on-board fence see-through, because you can turn your head a certain way and see through it. So the person would see, but if your neighbor you put that up, and even if the building official signed off and a neighbor says, well, that's not true, he's got a white picket over there and I can see just fine there and now I can't see here. So the largest issue you're gonna see in the city over the fencing, or actually he's gonna see more than anybody else, is going to be from people blocking or limiting the view. I mean, this is a water-based community for the most part. So, and that is the largest concern. And if you heard people come up here and complain and or file a lawsuit in the city, it's because somebody blocked their view.
Well, and that goes to the other question, when we talk about blocking view, who should have the right to complain? Should it be just some citizen?
Absolutely.
Should it be some citizen driving around who wants to park on that portion of the road and look?
I
Or should
completely
it be
agree.
should it only apply to your immediate neighbors? I mean, that's another, who should have standing to complain?
And that clarification is probably something that's, as was brought forward earlier, the adjacent property owners is pretty ambiguous.
It is, and that's why I meant in there, and in our code, we use adjacent and contiguous in several places to mean the same thing when they're clearly two different terms of
Absolutely.
art.
And a lot of people try to marry them and
Yeah.
make them the same. So especially if it works in their own advantage. So that being said, I think that definitely needs to be addressed. The issue as far as gauging the opening, and then of course clarifying the nearest building line. I agree completely. It should be. It's not that it should be, but my suggestion is that we would make it something where it's based off the setback requirement, not so much the end of the property, how the property's been managed. So, there are still a few vacant lots in the city, although they be very few and far between, especially waterfront. They do exist, and people are gonna wanna know that before they buy those properties. And then, of course, the other thing being the natural fences, it doesn't seem to make much sense how we're discussing the ability to see through a fence and then somebody could go along and put a hedge in.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's
Okay.
all I wanted to add to that, Mr. Chairman, I mean, I planted some arborvitae one time and made a wall,
Right.
you know, and quote, it wasn't a fence, but it was a 6 foot and you couldn't see through it, so.
And there's several I can think of half a dozen properties in the city and that are waterfront properties that they got away with they put up a fence, and it's a 4 foot complying fence, but then they put up bamboo and it's 10 feet tall, and the people can't see anything. So, or they have the one I think of, another one I think of, they put up the fence that complied, and then they took the last 20 feet and they put bird of paradise, which grows like a weed, and you can't see anything around it. Even to the point where you come around the corner on your boat, you can't see. So, but that person's, he followed the fence ordinance per se, so. All right.
I want to mention one other thing. In our city, most of the properties, the backyard is your view, but on Sunset, the front yard is our view to the water, and there's also a road in front, so if we're gonna specify 15 foot from the water, you may want to consider the road, and if that's gonna be included in the 15 feet, or.
Okay.
And if because some of those individuals over there they actually have fences to block off illegal use of their docks. So, and that's their right. Have that, they have the ability to protect their property. So, and we should probably clarify that as well.
It does bring a question about the new ramp that went in over there, if that fence that blocks its access is conforming to the fence ordinance.
Not aware of which property that is.
He's Mr. Cosmo.
Okay, that's fine.
He's familiar
Can you
with that.
address
Is that a fence or a gate?
It's a gate and a fence. As for the gate, there's 2 gates there, but the one gate is set into a fence.
The,
Doesn't match the ordinance, because it's taller than 6 feet.
he's talking about the boat ramp that's on Sunset.
Recently
Right.
installed.
By the marina?
Slip. Yeah, okay. Well, that deck, that fence was put up there only for safety reasons. And I couldn't find anything in the ordinance about, because it wasn't a complete fence system, it's more or less just a vehicle block and to keep people from walking down into the water there.
So you need a fence taller than 6 feet to perform that purpose?
Well, no, but I didn't consider it a real fence because you can walk around it. It wasn't really a fence barriering off an area, so I didn't really see it as a fence. That was actually, they had already had the fence before the building permit was approved before I even got here. So I kind of stepped in the middle of it, and the fence was already made.
The fence ordinance out predates that.
I understand.
My question is, if I provide a passage around the end of my fence, can I put up the 8 foot fence I want to put up? Well, they put it up, and that's your justification. So if you justify for him, I'm gonna raise my hand and seek justification.
Right. I see the there's definitely a need for clarification from that standpoint, because you're in the unique, not so unique, I should say, because it's happened to more than one building official here, where you've walked into just this very issue. So, and a lot of it happens where, oh, well, this was getting done beforehand. Well, if the code wasn't met prior to, that's the reason that the citizens do get upset. So, I don't know, what would be your protocol for moving forward? Obviously, we have.
Well, I want I've got some notes on some of the other issues that were brought up.
Sure.
Just want to go through some of the things that were specifically brought up by council to me.
All right.
So it's, from what I've heard, you're wanting to go with any type of body of water.
Okay.
Is that correct?
That was a suggestion that was put forward, yeah.
Now, how do we define that? I guess we still have to define body of water somehow. Would a drainage ditch that's full of water most of the time, would that qualify?
No,
And
we
I
need
hate
to
to take it to the extreme.
Sure,
but
absolutely.
I just foresee potential issues.
I mean, obviously, natural body water is very, very clearly laid out.
Yes.
As far as man-made bodies of water are concerned, I would say, personally, I would suggest nothing more than the management of fencing around stormwater management ponds, retention ponds in particular. For instance, like the one that was just built over where the culver's is going in.
Okay.
That's a good example of it. There was a fence around it, but they've already pulled it down. It was just a temporary fence anyway. But if they wanted to come back through and put a fence up, then we would of course want it to be something that was decorative and or wouldn't impede traffic. So, that would be, I would agree with Bob, that's something we definitely need to address. Any
But I
other
mean, on s-
clarification on that as far as man-made is concerned? He's got a point as far as if they wanted to take it to the nth degree with the drainage easements, could be a real issue.
And I wouldn't be surprised if something like that came up.
Correct.
But with
I
the,
would
with the
bet it
retention.
would, because I would be the sort that would find that loophole. So let's discuss that.
Well, does this ordinance include gates? Because, I mean, that was how that boat slip was viewed at the time. I mean,
It's
I'm
a
not-
fence.
Well,
When it's
It says
closed, it
fence
is a
and
fence.
walls, but is a gate a fence? And that's, I guess.
So I can have an 8-foot gate?
I'll probably let you put up the gate. The gate
Great.
doesn't go around the whole property.
Nope.
Now, the
Not yet.
fence goes around the property, but the gate is actually something that moves. You
Right.
open and close the gate, the fence is a stationary item.
Just put a gate over.
Is that fence next to that walk gate, is it also 6 foot tall or higher?
I mean,
I
I
don't
wanna
know.
get this right, so.
I do
yeah,
too, and
yeah,
I've been the subject of a code enforcement action
yeah,
that was less than friendly. So I'm gonna be particular about this.
Okay.
And if I'm gonna suffer what I suffered, it's gonna be equal.
I can see that you're very, and I have no issues with that, but I'm asking, do we have something, is there any, does this mention gates in here?
No,
Or
it doesn't.
Vehicle, gates or turnstiles or anything like that other than?
No, this doesn't rereference,
How would
reference
that
any of
differ
that.
from a fence?
I see what you're saying from a practical point of view, I mean, just from, I looked at it and said, it's a gate. You know,
Does our
it's a vehicle
existing-
gate.
So,
It's
Does
a
the
fence.
existing code that we have now state anything regarding any kind of gating?
To my knowledge, no.
So that's where, I didn't see it as a real fence.
Right.
You know, if you had a 4-foot fence around your property and you had a decorative gate that had a little rise on it, you know, the part that swung open or whatever, some people put those on there, I wouldn't be opposed to that. I mean, as, you know, as the, building official, to go out there and look at it, the majority of your gate or fence complies with the code, and you just have this movable gate. It's just like having a fancy door on a house. I mean, that's how I looked at it, it was a gate.
Well, seeing that we have an ongoing issue with this particular property, I don't think we need to get it too
Sure.
far into that at this point, because
I
there
was
is.
not aware of an ongoing issue. I was just asking the question
Yeah, no,
because
I mean, we
I
went
do
on-
know of a fence that's taller than 6 feet that recently constructed.
And
And I would like to construct a similar height fence myself.
There's an ongoing issue, and I really don't feel at liberty to address that or to address your point. We can meet separately and address that. I think would probably be a better venue
Okay.
for that.
That being said, then I would make a suggestion as well to you then, that we identify and or clarify the definition of gate and what is permissible in the city. So we
Okay.
can curb this quickly.
So I'll go ahead and make modifications and make this a more broader bodies of water, and that may be something when we come back with whatever language I provide,
Sure.
we again have to hash out.
I do
Okay.
think we need to exclude just a simple drainage ditch. It needs to be
Okay.
something of a decorative nature intended to enhance the community's value.
Right.
If you look around at several of the new communities going in, you find these where they're taking a retention pond, and changing it to something of value.
Right.
And that needs to be protected, whereas the ditch beside the house that stays full of
Yeah.
water, that's of no consequence.
Now, what about some drainage ditches in commercial areas where, for safety reason, it makes sense to put a chain link fence around them?
I
Lots of
wouldn't
communities.
say that we needed to even address that now due to the fact that we're just doing residential anyway.
Okay.
We need to clarify, the differences between commercial and industrial anyway.
I don't think there's any ordinance that prohibits an opaque or a see-through fence along any body of water. This ordinance doesn't. It doesn't,
4
it doesn't
feet.
restrict the height
Yeah, the height.
to 4 foot.
Right. So the issue with the view is a large issue as well, what people can see.
Now, how do we want to define that? That's, I mean, do you want me to come back and give you a couple different options and then?
I would suggest that, based off your conversation with the members of the city council, that you give us a couple of options.
Okay,
Because if you put 27 people in a room, you're gonna get 35 different answers.
okay.
So,
I'll provide some different options, possible ways of calculating the opacity and different things. And I'll get with the building official and figure out what'll work from a practical in the field standpoint.
fantastic.
Now, with regard to adjacent property owners, how do we want to go down that road?
That is a slippery slope. As somebody who sells a lot of waterfront property in this particular community, I know this has become it has been for 12 years I've been a broker here. It is a very big concern. Can he tell me I can't put a fence up on my property I'm buying over here? Well, no, but he can go to city council afterwards and complain because he can't see, you blocked his view.
Mm-hmm.
That being said, I think it needs to be clarified quite a bit because of the fact that personally, I don't believe it's anybody's ability to complain just because I've also gone through something similar from a neighbor who's 7 houses away to complain about what I put up.
Mm-hmm.
Now, my neighbor next door, he has every right to complain. So those are contiguous properties because it's adversely affecting two things: his property values and his ability to enjoy his property.
Mm-hmm.
So that would be my suggestion of which way to head. Adjacent is entirely too vague.
Okay.
Because the way it says now is adjacent is anybody that
It's the general area.
in the general area.
Yeah.
Well, a lot of us live in a general area. I mean, I generally live across the water from Lori, but I don't want to say that she can't do something on her property.
Mhm.
So,
So we're thinking more along the line of something contiguous.
that would be my suggestion towards council.
Okay.
Anybody else have any comment regarding that?
My only comment is adjacent should be limited to a community, not a area large. And whether we say second or third adjacent,
Yeah, even go so far as to say 2 properties away from a property or something like we need some kind of clarification from that standpoint.
Okay,
Because
what
he's
I'll-
right. There may be that person who lives at the end of the canal who's put their fence up and 2 properties away that, because the guy next door has got a 3-story house. He doesn't care.
yeah, we do need to clarify just exactly how far that adjacent,
I'll put together a definition that says contiguous, and I'll define it, and then we can work with that, and then I'll do adjacent, define it, and then you guys can decide what you think is the most work.
I would also request from the city attorney that could you research as per the gentleman's question.
County ordinance? Yes,
The
sir.
county ordinance, so we can see the difference
I've already
between
got a
what we
note for
have and
that.
what they
Next
have.
time we meet, I'll make sure I have a copy of the county ordinance for
Fantastic.
your review.
I think you got them all, right?
I think those are the primary issues, yes.
Any other questions or concerns?
did we make a decision on section 6?
That's a good one. We missed that one altogether. Thank you, Bob. Do we have any I think, Bob, you made a suggestion regarding that, removing that completely?
Removing the ability of the city manager to waive the requirements. I do think it needs to go before an unbiased board rather than a single person.
Okay.
If
Yeah,
you
well,
look at section 6 now, it says the city manager is authorized to waive the height requirements, and it gives no oversight.
It doesn't even have permission for the building official to review it,
Correct.
which.
It's strictly the city manager, and I never like it when one person has that kind of power.
Absolutely.
This is a
Yeah.
democracy.
My recommendation with that, which is in the notes, is to go ahead and remove the city manager from that and provide the Board of Adjustment with the authority to review that.
Absolutely.
And any appeals would be sent directly to city council.
Will that place an unnecessary burden on the public, however? Currently, if someone in the public wants that to address it, he can go to the city manager and get it addressed almost immediately. So what is the burden that's gonna place on the public to seek this waiver? Is
Well,
it
the
gonna be a
additional burden that-
30-day burden, a 90-day burden, or a 6-month burden?
There'll be a time, it could be anywhere from 30 to 90 days, and there'll also be additional fees associated with it. I envision this being treated as any other variance.
As long as we don't fall into the category of creating an unnecessary nuisance and burden to the city public, then yes.
Well, what are the costs associated with the variance?
BOA, with standard BOA fees, what is it?
I think it's, $400?
Yeah, it's several $100s.
Yeah,
Because it takes a lot of staff time and everything to address these variances.
I personally would agree with that as far as, because if you don't want to comply with the way there has to be a reason behind your request to modify it anyway. So from that standpoint, you're right. There's a lot of staff involved in that. So there's the girls that work behind the bag, and then the building official goes back in front of the
Well, I'm just
BOA.
thinking
Absolutely.
the last time we had an issue under this section, the amount of staff time
Sure.
is in double digits.
Always follow the procedure, at least, people would come in and ask for a variance. I said, well, I have to look and see, you might not need one.
Right.
Let me look at the land development code or the building code, you may be wasting your $400.
Right.
And so, you gotta look at it initially.
Sure.
Which would, you wanna designate, the building official to look at it, and if you're not happy with that, file your application for a variance.
I would think I would do that.
How is a variance buffered right now? Where does the process begin?
It's supposed to begin with the denial of the building official. You come in and if I approve it, you have no need for a variance.
Right.
So,
I like you, but I doubt that I'm gonna sweet talk you into anything.
I'm pretty tough, but you know what?
All right, then I would suggest we modify that.
Okay, we'll go ahead and modify that. I think I have some direction as far as what I need from this board.
Okay.
I'll put some stuff together, and then when it's ready, we'll go ahead and schedule another P&Z meeting to discuss that.
Fantastic.
Okay, that's all I have this evening.
Any other questions, concerns from the board? Do I have a motion to adjourn? Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. Ladies and gentlemen.